الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم افتح علينا بحكمتك وانشر علينا برحمتك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. يا عليم علمنا من علمك ما ترضى به عنا ولا تؤاخذنا بما تعلمه منا. يا حليم خلقنا بخلق الحلم وحققنا بحقائق العلم. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. I want to extend a warm and joyous welcome to every single one who is here tonight. Whether they are Muslims or not Muslims or whoever they may be, everyone is welcome here. And all of you here increase the joy that we have by your coming. And we hope that we can see you again and again, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. All of these beautiful songs that you've heard have genealogies. It means that if you knew about them, you would know who are the men and the women that they go back to, whether they are in Arabic or whether they're in Urdu or whether they're in some other tongue. And the genealogy of these beautiful songs goes back to the people who know God. They are arifin and arifat. They are men and women that God has blessed with the knowledge of Him, which is the greatest knowledge of all. And they have that knowledge by virtue of the fact that they also have knowledge of the Blessed Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who is the key to all of that good. And these songs that we sing are much more important than anything that a person like me could say. And that's because of the hearts from which they come. And if you understand the language of these songs, you will know that sometimes the language is very, very simple. And sometimes the language is not in classical Arabic, but it's in colloquial Arabic. And yet, the people who wrote these songs are giants. And they wrote this as a gift to the ummah, as a gift to the people. And as Ibn Ata'Allah says, may God be pleased with him, كل كلام يخرج وعليه كسوة القلب الذي منه خرج. That all speech that comes out of the heart, it comes out wearing the drapery, the beautiful drapery of the heart from which it came. So this is the ornament that we want to take on tonight. We want to take on the ornamentation of these beautiful hearts that is singing to us. Even though you may not understand the words, but the words are very beautiful. And one of the things that we must emphasize is the fact that the touchstone by which we know the health of this ummah is the love of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. No community ever loved the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam as much as Abu Bakr as-Siddiq and Umar and Uthman and Ali ridwanullahi alayhim and the Sahaba that were around him. We can fill our hearts with the love of the Prophet ﷺ, that we will never be able to match the love that they had for him. And their greatest dhikr was in looking at him. Their greatest dhikr was in being close to him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Their greatest dhikr was in smelling the fragrance of his presence. And as some of these beautiful songs have told us, and as you know from the seerah and from the shama'il, that the Prophet ﷺ, if he put his hand on someone, like a child, everyone knew that because they could smell that fragrance. It stayed with them. And this is the way that he was, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we always know how healthy we are as an ummah in terms of how much do we love the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And of course, if we love him, we will follow him. It's inconceivable that you love the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and refuse to follow him. Some people don't follow him because of their weakness. And God forgives them, bi'ithnillahi ta'ala. And we have hadith about that. But the lover follows the one that he or she loves. And they obey the one that they love. And they give everything to the one that they love. And we have a great history. And here we are in this beautiful center, which reminds us of the greatness of the children of Uthman. These were great people. Don't ever doubt that for a moment. One of the greatest civilizations ever on earth. And what was the foundation of their greatness? The love of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, without question, without limit. And of course the love of the Quran, and the love of the awliya, and the love of the Sharia, and the love of the Deen, and the love of the Ummah. But all of that was rooted in the love of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when we gather like this, as we said, the purpose of this is to try to get that flame to be kindled in our heart, that we love him, bi'ithnillahi ta'ala. And we know our own health by our reactions to these beautiful words. Because when we're healthy, it fills us with light. It fills us with joy. And when we're not healthy, maybe we don't perceive anything at all. And that's a warning for us. But it's very important for us to foster the love of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And these are nights of celebration. And as we said before, what a beautiful way to enter the new year, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, which is either tonight or it's tomorrow night. And we enter the great month of Al-Muharram. So what a good, blessed way to enter that. And we have children here making noise and running around, and they're welcome to do that. And if they want to come and take the microphone, they're welcome to do that. And one of the most important things to know is that one of the best things that we can do for our children is to expose them to the beauty of the dhikr. And we want to do that in serious ways, at home or in the mosque, at school. We want to do it also in ways that are fun. And we want to do it in ways like this, which are very informal and very beautiful. But the dhikr, especially the beautiful dhikr, like the dhikr that we hear on nights like this is really what will hold that child so that he or she grows up with the rope of God, with the handhold of God, and urwatul wuthqa, and they can take that bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. We live in a very difficult time. We live in a very dangerous time. And if we begin to look around us at the world and to see how little we have done and how poorly we have generally done at the little that we have done, and we see that our enemies have surrounded us and our enemies have got every weapon in their arsenal, and it seems like every day brings news of some new calamity. And this is why we have to take refuge in the memory of the Blessed One, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because he came into the world at a time which was much darker than this, and at a time that was much more difficult than this. And he came in, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with nothing material or social or political or military to help him. He is born, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the most beautiful of all creation, and he is waheed. He is by himself. He loses his father, whom he never was honored to know, never blessed to know. And he loses his mother when he's still a little boy. And then he loses his grandfather when he's still a young adolescent. And he is an orphan of Bani Hashim. And in that society, the orphan is essentially dispossessed, although he was treated with great love and great honor, and he was known to be great, but not to be a leader, not to be a person that would lead people out of the darkness into the light. All of the odds were against him. And in order to do the miraculous work that he did, he would have to win the hearts of his enemies. And he would have to unify the Arab tribes that had never been unified before. And that's not easy. The Prophet himself said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, لَوْلَا الْإِسْلَامُ لَأَكَلَتْ تَمِيمٌ الْعَرَبِ, that if it were not for Islam, the tribe of Tamim, which is one of the big tribes of the plateau of Central and Eastern Arabia, and they're a good tribe. They're very honest, they're very upright, they're very tough. But he said if it were not for Islam, they would have eaten the Arabs alive. And so he will convert Tamim, he will convert all of these other tribes. How in the world will he do that? And when you look at what he accomplished, it is beyond measure. It is a sheer miracle. Every single part of it. And not only that, but the Prophet ﷺ did everything he did with perfect grace. And part of his grace was that he did the minimum that had to be done to accomplish the work perfectly. Setting for his ummah a model and teaching them a lesson. That this is not because of your efficiency. This is not because of your energy. This is not because of your wealth or your power or your genius, even though all of that came to be there. There is no genius like that of the Prophet ﷺ, although I believe using that word with regard to him is probably not appropriate. But Al-Qadi Iyad says in the Shifa that if you take the intellect of the messengers sallallahu alaihi wasallam and you put it in one scale of balance, and you took the intellect of all humanity, including Imam Ali and Imam al-Hassan and Imam al-Hussein and the great Imams of Ahlul Bayt and Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman and all the others, that the Prophet's intellect alone would outweigh them all. And that's not an exaggeration. If anything, it is an understatement. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, but if we look at the material circumstances of his life, what he did was sheerly impossible. Completely impossible. And yet he did it with the greatest grace of all. And he could have done it just with a dua. He could have asked Allah, make Quraysh Muslims. Spread this deen. Destroy Abu Jahl. Destroy Abu Lahab. Do you think God would not have done it? But that's not the way the Prophet did things. He did things with the greatest of grace and with also the most effortless expenditure, giving all of his time to God, all of his time to his ummah. And in this teaching us a lesson that the material circumstances in which we live do not rule. Okay, so this is what we have to remember. This is what we have to remember. If we look at the material circumstances, we are in trouble. If we look at the situation that we're in right now, have we ever been in a worse situation? But do you believe in God?
Yeah.
He is Rabbul Asbab. He is the Lord of all conditions, material and otherwise. And do you believe in the Prophet? And do you love him? And do you fill your heart with his love? Because if you do that, then we will be victorious. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. And there's nothing to fear. We have to work hard, we have to be efficient, we have to do everything that we can. But as they say in some Arab countries, مَنْ لَيْسَ فِيهِ مَحَبَّةٌ لَا يُسَوِّي حَبَّةٌ. That he or she who has in his or her heart no love is not worth a thing. Not worth a thing. And this is the biggest problem that our ummah faces today. That so many of our ummah, they don't know the Prophet ﷺ. And we won't say they don't love the Prophet, but how can you love someone you don't know? And how can you love someone like him, whom God has commanded you to invoke blessings upon, and you don't do that? And to love him is to honor all of the remnants that he has left behind, everything that he's done, and to love that with a powerful love. And you don't have to be told about our situation, because that, if we look at the common Muslims in Pakistan or in India or Bangladesh or Africa or Asia or elsewhere, the Arab world, they love the Prophet. They love the Prophet. That's what keeps us going. That's what keeps us going. But we have to foster that love, especially among the intelligentsia and among those who have been given what we call an education. The doctors, the lawyers, the engineers, the generals, and others. This is very, very important. And we have to do that very wisely, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. But, put your trust in God. I don't want to talk long, but let me tell a story. Is this story true? Is it false? I tend to believe that it's true, but if you don't want to believe it, you don't have to. This is a Bible story. And this is the story of Shimshun, whom we call in English Samson. And most of you know that story. I know it very well because I was brought up a Christian. And we studied it every year, at least probably twice. But Samson was what was called in the children of Israel a Naziri. A Naziri. And that means that he was always, his life was determined by the nazar, which they call nazar, of his mother and father. And you know about that from the Quran, because the mother of Mary was also a Naziri, because her mother and father devoted her to the cause of God. So, and that means that she doesn't have to serve her mother and father. She has to serve God. So in doing that, they release the person from the filial obligation to serve the family and the mother and the father, so that they just serve God. And Samson, they say, was like this. So he is devoted to God for his whole life, and the male Naziri and the children of Israel, his principal duty was jihad. And the children of Israel, this was their main obligation before God, to do jihad. Whereas the principal obligation of the children of Isaac, of Isaac, Ishmael, and of Isaac, was to preserve the pilgrimage, the rites of the pilgrimage in Arabia. And we're also told by great scholars that they were also to protect the secrets of the religion. And they did that. And they did that very faithfully and for a very long time. But the Naziri was a special person of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel who had to do jihad. And Naziris didn't cut their hair. That was their sharia. The Naziri could not drink wine. There are certain other things he couldn't do. And he couldn't cut his hair. So the Naziri's hair would always be very long. But according to this story, and the story is what's important, God didn't put Samson's strength in his body, although Samson was a big, powerful man. Without his hair, he would have been called what we call a hero. And the hero, of course, you know about superheroes, right? But we live in the age of adulteration. Okay? But the hero is a man. And the word man, it comes from the same root as hero, meaning that he is a man with complete muru'ah, complete futuwa, complete chivalry and manliness. And he could even be a woman by gender, but he has muru'ah. And he's powerful. The hero in battle is powerful, so that usually a hero is stronger than 30 people. And this was typical in ancient cultures, whether it was in India or Pakistan or wherever it was, whether it was in the Ottoman army or wherever it was, you had heroes. And the hero, you better watch out for the hero, because they're like some of our leading athletes today, that who could stop them? Not me. They are stronger than 30 people. Samson wasn't like that. He was stronger than everybody put together. But the secret of his strength, according to the story, was not in his body. Even though his body was beautiful and big. He was tall. He was powerful. But it was where? In his hair. In his hair. And that's why his enemies always tried to find out, how is this man so strong? Because they could never do anything with Samson. And then the story goes on that they discovered that his strength was in his hair, and they shaved his head. And then he's a strong man, but you can overtake him with 100. He's strong enough to defend himself from 30, but not from 100. And so they captured him, and they put out his eyes, and they made him a slave to grind their grain like an ox. And then his hair grew back, so he became very strong, but he couldn't see anymore. Okay? That's the story. Now, why would we tell a story like that? Because in our ummah, we also have Samsonite hair. And what is that hair? It is love of the Blessed Messenger. So that is our Samsonite hair. And it's also love of Ahlul Bayt. The love of Al-Hassan and Al-Hussein and of all Ahlul Bayt. And it is love of the Sahaba, of Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman and the Ansar and the Muhajirin. And it's love of the awliya. All of the awliya of God. And how many of them are there? They can't be numbered. The awliya are more numerous than the stars. And this is why Sidi Ali al-Jamal was one of the great awliya of Morocco. He tells us the wali is hidden. That's usually the way they are. How many awliya are in this room? The greatest ones are sitting here. And you and I probably have no idea who they are. It's probably the least conspicuous among us. Because that's the way wilayah works. And that's why we were taught, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, he said, never think, radiallahu anhu, and he's our Imam. He said, never think that any good deed is too little. Because you never know where the pleasure of God lies. And maybe you do a little deed, and then that changes everything. God loves you forever. Because of that little deed you didn't even think about, but because of that, He changed your life. And you know the story of the woman of the children of Israel who had lived a desolate life. And yet she gave water to a dog on a thirsty day, and God forgave her all of her sins, and she became a saint because she gave water to a dog. Okay, so never regard any good act to be little, to be too little, and never regard any bad act to be insignificant, because you do not know where the wrath of God is hidden. And we do this all the time, don't we? This is not important. I can do that, I can do that. I'll do tawbah. No, you don't know. Maybe you won't be able to do tawbah. Maybe this will be the straw that breaks the camel's back. And then also the awliya, they are hidden. And this is why the believer looks upon all humanity as potential awliya. We know that some of them are not. We know some of them are evil. So we're not fooled by them. But you know the story of the great sheikh who wanted to give the legacy of his path to the best of his students. And he said, I will give it to the person who finds and brings to me a person who is worse than he is. And so they went out and they found someone comes with a drunkard, the other one comes with a thief, the other one comes with a murderer, the other one comes with a pagan who worships idols. And he says, just go home. And then the one who would be the sheikh, he comes back empty-handed. He said, I couldn't find anybody. Because no one that I found could I be sure that he wasn't or she wasn't better than I. And even when I looked at idolaters and pagans, I don't know, maybe tomorrow, he or she will become a bigger believer than I. So he couldn't even bring a pagan. He couldn't bring a drunkard. He couldn't bring a murderer. And he said, I'm sorry, I couldn't find anyone. He said, then you could be the sheikh. You can be the sheikh. And this is why also Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, he tells us, never regard any of God's servants to be nothing. Never look down on any of them, because you don't know where the wilayah is hidden. This is who we are. We are not proud, ostentatious, arrogant people who think we are the best and everyone else is nothing else. That's not Islam. That's the path of the Khawarij. That's the path of the outcasts. That's not the path, of the believers. And that's not the way this ummah was at all. And Sidi Ali al-Jamal, he says that when you talk about the awliya, when you talk about people, if I want to love God, I have to love all people. And I have to serve all people. If I want to serve God, I have to serve people. In the service and the love of others is the love and the service of God. And there are many hadith that teach us that, many verses of Quran that teach us that. But he said that the person who speaks lightly of other people, who looks down on them, is like a person who puts his hand in a snake hole. And he puts his hand in the snake hole and there's no snake, and he doesn't get bitten. And then he goes to another snake hole and he says, there's no snake here. And he puts his hand in and he's not bitten. And then he gets really brave and he goes to another hole, there's no snake. And then finally he puts his hand in the hole and there's a snake. And he's bitten and he dies. So we don't take those chances. We look up to human beings. We honor human beings, bi'ithnillahi ta'ala. And we cherish the love of the best of all creation, who is the Prophet Muhammad. That is our Samson here. And the love of Ahlul Bayt, and the love of the Sahaba, every single one of them, and the love of all of the awliya, in the east, in the west, in the south, in the north, and wherever they are. And then we become the gift of God to the world. Then we become the people who have the magic touch that brings civilization back to life wherever it goes. That's who you are. Look at our countries like Pakistan. Look at our countries like the great civilization of India, or of Bengal and Bangladesh, or of the Arab world, or of West Africa. Wherever we went, we created civilizations that are beyond our imagination today. And those of you who come from these great countries, you have some idea of how great that tradition was, even though we really don't know anymore. But that can all come back, except that there is a secret, and that is love of the Prophet ﷺ, and love of his family, and love of the companions, and love of the awliya. And we ask God to have mercy on us, and to enable our ummah to do this, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. That's where all good is. And then you're Samson, and your hair begins to grow back. And we don't do that so that we can kill and destroy and be triumphal. We do that so that, inshallah, we can build again. This society in which you're living here, we ask God to guide it. We ask God to protect it. One of the things I love about this center is that they put the American flag here conspicuously in that room. Now, we've got the partition so you don't see it, but they do that. This is our country. We love this country. We ask God to guide this country, but this country is in trouble. Our politics in this country, for the last almost 60 years, the age of television has been turned into entertainment. There's no depth. There is no seriousness. While this country is the most powerful on the earth in terms of its weapons and its economy and so forth. And it's facing big problems. Global warming is certainly one of the biggest dangers we face. And we have fools who don't even believe it's happening. Right? What are we going to do about that? There's not any time. And we have many other problems as well. What about the inner city? What about racism that we have not dealt with adequately? We need leaders. And where are they? And we have a political system today that is producing people that we could call buffoons and clowns, except that they're not that. They're worse than that. And if they take the helm, what will happen to us? What will happen to the world? So we have to pray. We have to ask God to guide us and to protect us. But you are the one, who can set things right in Chicago, in the inner city, in this country, in Canada, in Mexico, in Latin America, in England, in Europe. That's right. And you have to do that. That's what you were created for. But, you've got to also get all of the elements that you need to do that. And that begins with and never ends with the love of the Prophet ﷺ, the love of his family, the love of his companions, and the love of the awliya, and showing them the respect they deserve, and learning from them. These are people of great wisdom. These are the people that made our great countries. This is what an Ottoman house looks like. They were beautiful. The Europeans learned how to build from them. Wasn't the other way around. And that's also the love of the Prophet ﷺ, because we were a society that everything we did perfectly. We were a vocational society of guilds, highly specialized labor in everything we did. and everything we do. Well, we've forgotten all of that. And those guilds were all based on the love of the Prophet ﷺ, and dhikr and tarbiyah and so forth. So we ask God to benefit us by this night, to give us the blessing of this new year, 1438. It is now 1,438 years since the most beautiful of creation, the shining moon, made the hijrah to Medina. And he is the shining moon. That's an understatement. So many people, they want to see the Prophet, and they can't. And that's because they can't see that moon and not be overwhelmed. He is the most beautiful of all the human beings and all the things that God created. And for that reason, some men and women are not able to see him because they wouldn't be able to sustain it. May God make us strong so that we can see the Prophet. And let me end now with the hadith that you know about the Prophet's brothers. The Prophet said, Ummati kal-matar. My ummah is like the rain, the good rain. And the best rain comes in the fall. This is fall rain, and it's good. It's good for the soil. It's good for the trees. This is the best rain. He said, Ummati kal-matar, la yudra awwaluhu khayrun aw akhiruhu. No one will know, meaning even on the day of judgment, this will be a contention. When you see the people who come at the end of time in this ummah, they will be a miracle of the Prophet. And why will they be a miracle of the Prophet? Because they love him with all their hearts and all their souls and everything they have. And if you give your nafs, you get everything back. And they will give their nafs for the love of the Prophet. They will be the best of people. So, in the end of this ummah, there will be great Muslims who are so great you don't even know, even in the next world, after you have weighed their deeds, who is actually better, the first or the last. And the Prophet said one day, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, I yearn for my brothers and my sisters. And the Sahaba said, Ridwanullahi alayhim, we are your brothers. We are your sisters. And he said, no, you're my companions. My brothers are those who will come after me, who never saw me. You never saw his beautiful face. You never smelled his fragrance up close. You never saw what an incredibly perfect human being he was. You didn't see what Abu Bakr saw or Umar saw. If you saw that, you would be transformed like them. So they never saw me, and they would give the whole world to see me. And I know that there are many of you, men and women, who would give everything just to see the Prophet. They would give their house, they would give their wealth, they would give their job, they would give everything just to see him. And this is the way these people will be. They would give everything just to see me, and they will have the reward of 70 of you. And what did the Sahaba ask of us or of them? He just wants to make sure he heard that right. And he said, no, of you. And they said, Lima ya Rasulullah. How could that be, O Messenger of God? And he said, because you had helpers. He could have said, because you had a helper. You had the Lion of God, who is the Prophet Muhammad. He is the Lion of God. We call others Lions of God, like Imam Ali, and like Imam Khalid, and others, Sword of God. But the Lion is the Prophet. He is everything. He could have done it by himself. But he didn't do that because he wants to teach you, and he wants to open up the door of mercy for all times. Okay? But he said you had helpers. And of course, he is the helper. But then there's Abu Bakr, and then there's Umar, and then there's Uthman, and there's Ali, and all of the Sahaba, Ridwanullahi alayhim, the Muhajirun and the Ansar. And they will have no helpers. And you and I, we have no helpers, do we? We are alone. We are alone. We are in danger. And so who do we turn to? We turn back to him, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. We turn to the love of his family. We turn to the love of his Sahaba. And we turn to the love of the awliya. And then we do have the awliya. They are here. They are many. They're not just a few. We ask God to enable us to have a beautiful year. And to have hope. Have hope. Put your hope in the Prophet. Have a good opinion of God. Have a good opinion of people. He who despises people despises God. Did you know that? He who looks down on the people looks down on his Lord who created them. اللهم وفقنا لما تحبه وترضاه وجعلنا من عبيدك السعداء وأمتنا على كلمة الهدى علمنا ما ينفعنا ووفقنا للعمل بما علمتنا به واجعل ما نحن فيه خالصا مخلصا لوجهك الكريم يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعل تجمعنا هذا تجمعا مرحوما وتفرقنا بعده تفرقا معصوما لا شقيا منا ولا محروما. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. We ask God to give us Samsonite hair. Give it back. And those who destroyed the love of the Prophet in this ummah, they are the ones who shaved Samson's head. Once this ummah is shaved and it doesn't have that Samsonite hair, then the world can play with it like a toy. It becomes nothing. And inshallah, God bless this ummah, this great ummah, and let us be like the simplest among us, the common people. You know them. In Pakistan, in India, in Bangladesh, in Asia, in Africa, in the Arab world, the common people, they love God. They love the Prophet, and may we be that way also. Ameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa kulla aam wa antum bi khair. Happy New Year.